Kiley from Luminary, and today we are joined by some very special people and we're celebrating Belper250. We're going to go around and introduce our guests. Rachel.
Hello, I'm Rachel, also from Luminary, and I'm really excited to have here for, I believe, his first ever podcast, Jedediah Strutt. Better late than never, really coming to the table with this, because we know that he's groundbreaking in the work he's done in the Industrial Revolution. And we've also got a birthday boy in the room. It's Belper250. It's Jedediah's 300th birthday. And I think there's a triple there, is UNESCO World Heritage 25 as well?
Yeah, the Derwent Valley Mills World Heritage Site is 25 years come December.
So we'll allow Jedediah to keep a little bit quiet, but he's really got his eye on me. He's watching what I'm doing, and I'll move round and introduce Richard Terry, and you can tell them what your role is in all of this.
Thanks very much. Yes, I'm working with a small team of volunteers on the sort of marketing and communications side of Belper250. So we've put together the website and marketing materials. You might have seen the stickers in the shop windows, for example. And we've also published a newsletter that we released in January, and that went out to about 3,500 homes across Belper and surrounding areas. And we're also working on the Facebook page, the Instagram page, and we've been doing interviews with various people and putting up videos and so forth, and social media, etc.
Brilliant. So this forms part of the body of that work of getting some promotion out there.
That's trying to keep everybody informed as to what's going on and what it all means as well, and trying to keep Jedediah in the frame as well, because after all, that's what it's all about.
Yeah. Yes. And shall we now say Adrian Farmer, who I think a lot of people might know Adrian's face. I think he's a bit of a famous, big in Belper, shall we say.
I've been around for a long time.
Because of your passion?
I've been interested in Belper and its history for a long time now. A very long time when I think about it. But I've been the heritage coordinator for the World Heritage Site for the last 22 years. Till the end of this month, and then I'm retiring. That's before that I was the editor of the Belper News. So I was editor of the Belper News for 14 years. So we had a centenary edition of the Belper News back in 1996. I read 100 years worth of the Belper News just to check that I knew what I was talking about before we did the centenary edition, and that got me into Belper and its history. So I knew about Jedediah, I knew the anniversary was approaching, and then I thought, better tell people, and that's where it all started from, really.
Wow.
Okay, so this is kind of your idea, but it's kind of grown, I presume, snowballed.
Yes,
I've heard talk of a fashion show that's being planned today. It was my, unexpected thing. Is that tied in with this?
To be honest, there's so much going on now. I don't know of all the activities that I know about. We started it off with pulling together all the sort of history-related activities, and there was over 100 of those that we gradually pulled together across last year.
So who's forming part of these? Who's sort of helping coordinate it? Is it like local businesses?
Initially, it was a lot of the sort of, well, we just put it out there to anybody that wanted to turn up to public meetings. So we had about 3 public meetings. And then, the businesses came in towards the end of last year. And it's got a whole new sort of push behind it now. And there's a lot more stuff coming through for the rest of the year.
I think it's great because it shows a lot of the community spirit as well, with everything going on, and people want to know and understand the history and be part of that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. There was a lot of people turning out for the public meetings. We've got all sorts of different groups offering to do things. We've got people opening buildings that you don't usually get to see, and people offering performances that they've done specifically for the actual anniversary. So it's a whole raft of new stuff that Belper's either not seen before or that we're reinventing old stuff.
Yes, yeah, and that's quite nice, going back to the heritage, which the 250 years, I guess, I mean, it's hard to imagine Belper 250 years ago, isn't it? But I think of all the people in the sort of area, you'll have a better idea than most. What changes Jedediah made to the area?
Hugely. I mean, Belper completely transformed. It was a tiny little village full of nail makers and a few farmers, and that was it. There was one shop. That was it. There was very little. The marketplace was then the village green, and there was a couple of roads going through, but it was really, really quiet. Jedediah completely changed the way that the community worked. Built sort of, we're a bit like Edinburgh. We have an old town and a new town. They built the new town, which is sort of all the long row and the clusters area and round by the mills. Built housing that was finer than any housing that anyone had ever lived in, sort of a working class level. The town grew really quickly. We overtook all the other towns in the county, apart from Derby, in terms of size. Chesterfield caught us up in the end and overtook us, but Belper was really, really growing in the first half of the 19th century.
So he'd started in Cromford, hadn't he? Investing in Cromford Mill with Richard Arkwright.
Yeah, he'd already got mills in Derby.
Okay.
They were producing hosiery. It was hosiery that he really made his money on originally. He's the guy who invented the Derby rib, and it's the Derby rib that helps your socks stay up. It's still the same technology today that keeps your socks up. Is what he invented for the machine. Before that, if you wanted socks that stayed up, you had to get them hand knitted. Right. Otherwise, they just wouldn't cling to the leg. And of course, back in those days, it was the men that liked to show their legs off properly to the ladies. So once you were able to have stockings that were machine manufactured that clung to the leg, he made a fortune and then invested in Arkwright, because Arkwright had got this idea for producing huge quantities of cotton. Yeah, which is perfect for somebody who wanted to be producing a huge number of socks.
Yes,
basically.
And the water-fed mill.
Absolutely. It was water power that really allowed it to be mass manufacturing for the first time in the world.
Yeah. So it's interesting. So we've got the Derwent Valley mills, haven't we? So Cromford, Milford, and Belper, and it's such a landmark on it. It's such a huge mill. The North Mill that's left, isn't it? But it was the South, was it?
The first mill became the South Mill. The second mill became the North Mill. Then they added the West Mill, the Round Mill. Yeah. The East Mill came after the Strutts, but it's the East Mill that people spot now, because that's the biggest building in the valley. At one stage in the 1820s, it was the biggest industrial complex under single ownership in the world.
Which is why it's a UNESCO site, presumably. So forget the Taj Mahal. We've got... In
terms of world history, we're far more important.
Of course. To a great extent, it's something you can tell the community are incredibly proud of. Yeah, for whether they fully understand or not. But, I think... going back to what we were saying about the housing and everything, I mean, how do you feel? Was because both Arkwright and Strutt bringing the mill housing, was it an improvement to people's lives? Was it that groundbreaking?
It was transformational. People were coming from the Peak District. They were living in hovels, really. They weren't even proper houses. And then there was opportunities to, you're going to have to work for 12 hours at a time, but compared to trying to live on the Peak District with agriculture, was really poor quality soil. They didn't know where the next meal was coming from, and suddenly they were getting paid regular wages. They got decent houses to live in. They had a bit of money on the side as well. Strutt opened a bank so that they could save some money for their old age. There were all sorts of activities going on that meant that they were living far more comfortably than they ever thought they would do.
And who would you think, is there someone you'd compare him to, like in modern times? Could you?
No, because I don't think we do that anymore. There aren't people of that scale.
No.
It's a it's a whole different world. There are so many billions more of us than there were then. But in terms of to actually create something that was so economically transformative of the of the country, of the world, really, but then to be actually spending a large amount of that money making good housing for workers, providing them with some kind of medical support, providing them with decent shops and civic buildings and chapels. There's nobody that does that now.
No.
We did have them in the 19th century. We've got Saltaire in Yorkshire, and you've got Bourneville with Cadbury's. But no, you don't get those kind of people anymore. The people that make the big money these days are a little bit less anxious to spend it on other people, aren't they? Really, that's why there's where we are.
Yeah,
really.
yeah. So okay. Let's move on. So let's move on to really talking about the 250 celebrations. And I don't know who's best to turn to. What's your part been in this, Richard? What's your angle on? Have you brought any ideas to it?
Well, we've been really trying to communicate the excitement of the whole year, really, to as broad an audience as we can possibly reach. And of course, that's why we're trying to reach out through social media, and we've had contact with local media, the radio and the press and so forth. But also we have the website, and I think the important thing about the Belper250 website is it has a full listing of all the events, has a full calendar listing, quite detailed, of all the events that are planned. And there's, as Adrian mentioned, there's over 100 of those. And they're all kinds of things. Some of those things would happen anyway because Belper has such a rich community and culture, and an enormous number of things happen every year in any case. But I think what this provides is a sort of framework around which all of these things kind of cohere. And if you like, there are three sort of strands to it. One is the heritage, and there's an enormous amount of activities going on. And Adrian himself is doing quite a lot of walks and talks, for example. But there are other talks going on throughout the year to do with various aspects, not only about the Strutts and the mills, but other aspects of the heritage locally. And some of those talks, indeed, are even happening further afield in Derby and in London, for example, but tied to the history of Belper. And there's also the community aspect. So there are various things happening that are to celebrate Belper community. For example, there is the river cruise that happens in the summer, and other events like the hobby donkeys, which is an event which is based around a community arts program, but also harks back to the days when there was in fact a donkey derby in Belper, but obviously we can't really subject live donkeys to that sort of event anymore. No. So what's happening there is that children are going to be working during, I think, the May holidays with Chris Lewis-Jones, who's part of, and he's working with Fleet Arts to create hobby donkeys that will then later in the summer take part in a hobby donkey celebration in the Memorial Gardens. So there's an example of how heritage, community and creativity are all coming together.
And it's for everyone as well, isn't it? All the families.
It's very inclusive, exactly, And of course, that's very much Belper as it is now. Belper's a very inclusive place. It's a creative place. It's a place with an enormous amount of community spirit. And I'm sure Jedediah himself would have been very happy to have been involved in some of these things. Because looking back, I mean, one thing about Jedediah, if you read, we have a lot of his letters, for example, that he exchanged with his first wife and his second wife and his family. And you can tell that as a personality, he was very involved in the community. He had a great sort of sense of morality of trying to help people out. And also he was very interested in all aspects of life. He wasn't just a sort of bean counting sort of industrialist. So I think there's a sort of link back to Jedediah himself in the fact that we're involving all of these various community groups in the celebrations.
Okay. And so who came up with Strutty Bangers?
Adrian.
Well, the term already existed. The Herbert Strutt School used to be a grammar school, so it was paid for with Strutt money. The school was opened in 1909, and the pupils there tended to get called strutty bangers by other schools as a sort of term of not endearment, but they decided to own it and actually go with it, and so they started calling themselves strutty bangers. And when I heard the term, I thought, we haven't got a Belper food. We're not like Bakewell or other places. Yeah. It'd be nice if we did. So when Belper250 came along, that was one of my first thoughts, was now we can have the strutty banger.
Fantastic.
So come up with a flavour that's fairly distinctive, and hopefully people will like it and go with it.
Okay, so that's a competition, is it? Or is that what's...
Yeah, effectively, it's to find one that what people will like and will sell well, but also you want something that tastes nice, otherwise people are going to not want to eat Belper food.
Yeah.
So it's got to be something... we were trying to come up with ideas as to something that might tie into Belper's history. One suggestion was that include watercress in that, because watercress used to grow along the Coppice Brook. But there could be all sorts of things that you could put in there. Expensive way to do it was, we used to have a deer park, which is what what the parks was originally, but putting venison in there might make it an expensive sausage, so perhaps we need to go in a different route to that. We'll see what happens, see how it goes.
Gosh. So this year we've already started with some events. It's going to be a year-long event. How many have we had so far, and how many more can we expect upcoming?
Well, I think that it's almost a bell curve, because most of the events are happening in the summer. So we've had quite a number of events already during the last sort of 3 months. We're sort of 3 months into the year, but now we really start to accelerate in terms of the events that are happening. And if you go to the website, have a look at the calendar, and each month you'll see that there are more and more events happening from now until about September time, during those summer months. Okay. And I think that particularly July and August, there are events happening almost every day. And some of the big events like the River Cruise and the Hobby Donkeys are happening in those summer months.
And are they based, I would have thought, around the River Gardens? So...
River Cruise in the River Gardens, Hobby Donkeys in the Memorial Gardens.
Okay.
And then obviously we have a number of venues in town. Number 28, for example, there'll be quite a lot of talks happening there. For example, there's the Unitarian Chapel, where there's a commemoration of Jedediah's birth in July, I think, happening there.
Yeah, July the 26th will be the 300th actual birthday, so there'll be a commemorative service in there, and directly before the Love Belper Festival is in the streets, and that will be sort of the biggest event, I think, of everything that we've got planned. There'll be a lot happening in town.
Brilliant. Will you be around for the Arts Trail as well? Have you got anything tied in with that?
The Arts Trail, they have said that it's Belper250 themed, and in the booklet that they're producing, so everybody buys a booklet as part of the sort of entry, and that includes a heritage trail in there, so people can work their way around town on the heritage trail and find it while they're nipping into the various venues. They'll also find that there's information about the history of the town, and then they can enter a competition at the end of that and win something. I don't know what they're going to win yet, but they'll win something.
Strutty banger, maybe.
Might be.
And I'm sure Jedediah will be present at some of those events.
That's what I was thinking. He might be present in town just for people to see. So this is a replica, isn't it? This is not.
This is not the original.
The original.
No, this was done 50 years ago for his 250th. Birthday, and the 200th anniversary of the mill starting. So that was produced and donated to the English Sewing Cotton Company, which was the company which came out of the Strutt's original company. So that was it's the 50th anniversary, therefore, of that painting.
So that's four. Four celebrations.
We've got many more. There's loads of anniversaries this year, one way or another.
It's really exciting. That's and great that you somehow managed to recognise that and tie it into all these events. It's very impressive that there are so many things happening in it's not a big place, Belper, but it's a significant place, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
And,
I think it's my old editor's head that I always think of anniversaries. So we know all these dates. You just keep an eye on them as they're approaching.
Yes.
It was Cromford's 250th 5 years ago.
Yes.
Because Arkwright started 5 years before Strutt started in Belper. But we were in the middle of COVID, and so a lot of the activities that we were thinking about for that got parked, which meant we're doubly determined to do stuff in Belper this time around. And we found something that there are things that happened in Cromford 250 years ago. So there is a Cromford 250, but it's just on the weekend of September 19th and 20th.
Is there still like time and space for if people want to get involved? Is there still room for that? And if someone did want to get involved, how would they go about doing it?
Best thing really would be take a look at the diary and see what dates are still there, available in the Belper250 website diary, and then use the contact email that's on there from the website. So the website's the place to go, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. I'm going to bring it back to, so we're in the middle of Belper, in quite an old building that is at the technological stage of being a podcast studio. So cutting edge, the podcasts have been around for a while, but we're sat in, how old is this building, do you think?
It must be quite old because the Belper's first newspaper was produced here.
Okay.
I forget what it's called. I think it was something like the Belper. It might be the Belper and Alfreton Chronicle, but it might be an early one. But anyway, it is definitely the first newspaper produced in the town was from this building.
Oh, wow.
And so this building's had a mixed heritage. We're above Earth Harmony. I don't know if everyone knows where we are. And it's at the top of Queen Street. We've got Cheapside, which I still feel not many people even recognise Cheapside as an area within Belper. And across from the Memorial Gardens. So gardens or park?
Memorial Gardens. They were
Yes,
originally the paddock for one of the Strutt houses, which was Green Hall, which is where the Greenhouse pub is now.
Yes.
There used to be a bridge across King Street connecting the house to the garden, so that they didn't have to go and walk through the main street. You don't want to mix with the hoi polloi, do you? You take the bridge over. But it's a really old part of town. It's the old Chesterfield Road, is Brookside, that is tiny little street, but that was the main road through to Chesterfield at one stage. And you've got the marketplace, used to be Village Green, and the Black Swan, which a whole series of buildings are working their way towards this building. They were all part of the stables and extra buildings for that.
So we're just down from the marketplace, and we're in a building. We were talking earlier. There's been a nightclub or a milk bar.
Yeah, Susie Kendall was Belper's sort of most famous actor, I would guess, from certainly in the 20th century, and she decided she wanted to come back to Belper and open her own business, and she opened a milk bar called Barbaloo, which was in the basement. She tried to borrow a cow from the local farm so that they could, because the national press were obviously interested. She'd by this stage she'd married Dudley Moore, so she was one regularly the paparazzi of the time, the equivalent of anyway. They'd have been coming round to have a look, try and get a photographs and promote her. So it didn't last very long, but there are a lot of people in the town that have fond memories of it.
Yeah, I'd heard it was a bar. I just didn't know a milk bar. I thought it was a nightclub.
Well, it may have been at a later date. This is it with these old buildings. They get used for different things. So it could well have been after that. But it's Barbaloo time was when it was sort of in the national sort of media.
So that's the lower ground floor here, and we're on the top floor, which I think has been a variety of things, and now podcast studio and photography studio primarily. This brings me round to thinking, so if you could step back 275 years, Jedediah's 25 years old, what might you be wanting to ask him if you were having your own podcast?
Now, there's, I think it'd be interesting to see how his brain worked. I mean, he was full of ideas, and his son went on to effectively invent the skyscraper. That he'd gone to Findon to be an apprentice wheelwright. By the time he was 25, that would have been over, and he inherited the lease on a farm, so he went away and had a farm of his own, and then got married. But he was a huge Unitarian, and there had been a Unitarian academy in those days at Findon, so he was very much influenced by that. And it was his Unitarian thinking was that if he could. He needed to work hard, and he did, and he came up with these ideas. But interestingly, he felt that if he was going to be making a lot of money, he needed to be giving that back in some way, which is why he was providing for the workers in the way that he did, in the way that he built the chapel. He was building a proper community. It was, Belper's been described as the most Unitarian town in Britain, because that's that Unitarian thinking was that it's a very gentle way of a gentle religion, if you like, in terms of being supportive. I think if there's anything that was probably said against him, it was that he was perhaps over paternalistic. Right. But providing reading rooms so that people could find out more about the world, whereas most mill owners, as they were opening up mills, they were actually getting rid of people who were found with a newspaper, because they were finding out how the rest of the world was working, and they thought they might be trouble. Whereas Jedediah insisted that everybody was given lessons, and that everyone in the mill should be able to read and write, which is
incredible. And children, there were children working in these. We can't hide away from those
absolutely.
facts. Families.
Yeah. But he started the world. He was the first sort of businessman to open a school. He created a Sunday school, a school on a Sunday. It wasn't like a Sunday school that we'd think of as Sunday school, but he was very much wanting to educate those children. And whereas the law was making them raise the age so that children couldn't start so early, he'd already risen the age. He was. When you were still able to employ 7-year-olds, he was already employing them from 9 onwards. Or it was, and he and his successors were pushing that up all the time, and then the rest of the country was catching up.
Right.
So he was fairer than most, probably all of them, but he was still very much believed in hard work and expected that from others. But that was beneficial for the people of Belper.
Did you ask him his question? I don't know. Maybe we go to you and just get. Richard, have you thought of anything? And we'll let Adrian
At the age of 20, Jedediah was 25.
What was he doing at 25?
Well, he was involved in a long and tortuous series of letter writing to his then not even fiancée, but his friend Elizabeth, or Betty as he called her.
So they were an item. It wasn't unrequited.
Well, were they or not? This is a long sort of lead in to the proposal of marriage. And if you read the letters, they're very engaging, because it takes literally 7 years for Jedediah to put the question to
woo her
to Betty. And the letters themselves make compelling reading, because you can quite clearly see that Betty is a personality in her own right. And what I'd like to know at the age of 25 is how far she was influencing his thinking at that point and beyond, because I think there's a lot to be said for the role of his first wife in what subsequently happened. And certainly, as Adrian has pointed out, you look at the children, particularly William Strutt, who became this remarkable engineer and fellow of the Royal Society. That didn't come from nowhere. It was certainly partly because he was Jedediah's son. But I think the role of Elizabeth Strutt or Betty is something that we want to have a look at as well and celebrate.
A formidable woman, potentially.
Indeed,
yes. Yeah. Oh, that's really interesting, because never has she mentioned, or I've not heard, her name come up before.
She was Unitarian.
Yes.
She lived in Findon. He actually stayed with her family while he was an apprentice wheelwright and Findon. So he knew the family well, and it was her brother that had the hosiery firm that was trying to improve, and that Jedediah created the Derby rib for. I mean, they did it together effectively, but it was really Jedediah that did a lot of the heavy lifting in that. So otherwise, he wouldn't have come up with the Derby rib if it hadn't been something for the.
He emerges from
firm.
A community. He doesn't just sort of appear. He isn't beamed in from outer space.
No.
There's this community of dissenters, many of them Unitarians, that he grows up with in Findon. So he goes to Findon at the age of 14, and it's hugely influential on his thinking. And there are others, and as I say, there's his the woman who becomes his wife and her family, and there are various other interesting people as well. Dr. George Benson, I think, who's part of the story.
Benson,
who's a philosopher. So there are all these influences around that. At the age of 25, it would be interesting to have a conversation with him and see how he sees things developing.
Because I think that's it. Is there some debate maybe around his education, and you have to assume that he was quite an entrepreneur of his time. And
Unitarians weren't allowed to go to university. Because they were dissenters. They weren't allowed to access sort of the regular sort of educational establishments, which is why if you've got to think for yourself instead of just feed off what's always been taught in these places, that you come up with new ideas, and that's exactly what he did. 25. It's hard because at that stage he's not got the farm, and he hadn't got the farm, so he didn't feel able to offer Betty a sort of stable relationship or anywhere to live. But once he has got the farm, then he does send her a very lovely letter telling her how much nicer it would be if she lived in Derbyshire rather than in London, where she was in service at the time.
Okay.
And he seems to spend more time on how lovely it would be for her waking up in Derbyshire rather than in London, and then just finally gets round to the bit at the end where he actually says he loves her.
He's right, though. It is nicer in Derbyshire.
It is very much so. There's
wrong.
I'm always trying to get my family to move this way.
There's no comparison.
So let's let you ask him a question then. Should we say he's 50 now?
If he's 50, he is quite literally. He's already supported Arkwright, and when Arkwright owned Cromford, it was Jedediah that helped him to adjust the machinery so that it worked properly, so that they could mass produce. But at this stage, why did he pick Belper? Because he'd be literally at that stage where he was buying land up. It may have been that the land was available. Because
is it not the water as well?
Yeah, certainly that's what you'd need, the water and the land, and that was where it came together. His grandmother was from Shottle, so it may be that he had been passing through in early life and had seen from the bridge that where the river was, and that there was land at Belper. I mean, there's some suggestion that there might have been some kind of mill or something on the site beforehand. We don't know, because the records don't go back that far. But it would be interesting to know why he made that decision with Belper. And I mean, Arkwright did it on such a small scale. He ran it off a sough, so water was coming out of the lead mines that powered the mill. Jedediah went the whole hog and thought, right, that this raging torrent, the River Derwent, which a crazy river really in terms of how fast it can rise compared to many others, and went for it. So brave man. Be interesting to know what made him think of that. Again, another thing we've thought is that there was already Unitarians or nonconformists meeting in the town. Their old meeting house is still on Green Lane,
Right.
and it may have been that he thought, well, at least there'll be like-minded people there, and
Yes.
that he might get that sort of level of support from them. And he certainly seemed to. The people, some people talked to him. The Nailers were very much one of a kind and didn't really like the change by all accounts. But
There's
there's nothing on
normal
you.
change?
Absolutely.
It brings fear, doesn't
Yes,
it?
it does.
But did they come round? Did they end up? Were there any?
They were still throwing stones at his grandson's house windows 50 years after they arrived.
Okay. And in terms, so I'm just thinking with the mill. So there was a wooden mill that burnt down, and that's where, as you say, the skyscraper thing came by building the iron mill.
It was a brick one, but it hadn't got a metal frame. It was the frame that changed it. They took every bit of wood out of the rebuild. So it was metal framed windows.
Yes.
There was very little that could have burned. But yeah, that's William. His son William he got a friend called Charles Bage who produced the flax mill in Shrewsbury at Ditherington, and between them they were coming up with these fireproof buildings, but they were effectively the world's first skyscrapers. And the great thing about the Belper one is that it's adjustable, like all modern skyscrapers. You know, if you get an earthquake or if you get a movement or if you've got a lot of machines working in there that gradually move the frame, you can actually adjust it back with a big mallet. Basically, they were wedges at the bottom of the frame, and you can you can see where the marks where the mallets have been used to actually move the frame of the Belper North Mill back to so that it was absolutely right and wouldn't fall down.
Oh well, I know.
Wow.
Clever
There
stuff.
you go.
So we're learning stuff. So I'm hoping people watching this podcast that there's going to be stuff in here that they don't know. Did you ask him a question then? Did he ask?
I did. I asked him why he came to Belper. I suspect I know, but it'd be nice to actually know. You know, we sort of there's a lot of things that you just have to sort of take a leap and sort of. You think, well, it could have been this.
It's
could
a
have been,
jigsaw. It's joining the
yeah,
dots.
but to actually ask the questions and pin him down to an answer would be good. Yeah.
Interesting. Anything for you at 50?
Yes, well, it would have been so. That's a sort of looking backward, if you like. Why did you arrive here? I'd like to ask him, if I could, how he saw the development, because of course he did develop, and he obviously then bought land in Milford further down the river and developed Milford as well, and in partnership with Arkwright there was the Cromford development. So it'd be interesting to see what his vision was, because it may have been quite different to what actually took place, because there were all sorts of issues with land ownership and so forth. But and then subsequently, of course, it was really the Lancashire cotton mills that took over in the end from the Derbyshire mills to become the great sort of cotton centre of the country. And whether Jedediah would have had any sort of interest in that sort of side of things, in the sort of broader strategic growth of the industry, because he would have definitely been thinking about those things in terms of transport of raw materials and all the rest of it. But it would have been interesting at the age of 50, just as he's starting off here, really, to see if he had any sort of grand vision for it.
Anything you've got to?
No, I don't think so. It's just been nice hearing all about it. Obviously, I've been in Belper about 16, 17 years. So obviously you're aware of like the history, but you're not aware of the history. So it's nice. I mean, my kids have come home from school saying bits and bobs. So I think they'll be really interested to hear all of this as well, which would be good. So yeah, it's nice. I love all the community. I love all the things going on. There's always events. So when we saw at the Belper250, it was just a great opportunity to have a chat and pull it all together a little bit more.
Yeah.
We're trying to use the history so that the people in the town can engage with it more and look at it in different ways, really. One of the things that we're quite excited about is Judith Hibbert has come up with a sort of one-woman show which looks at, from 1953, it's somebody looking back at their life on Long Row, looking through a window, to the old street, and we're projecting old photographs. So we're using the history, but projecting old photographs of Long Row and the mills during the previous 50 odd years, while she tells stories that are based on fact. But obviously, the character that she's playing isn't a real character, but that a lot of the stories are genuine stories from mill towns, and I've watched her go through it once so far, and it's just brilliant how it sort of brings the history alive in a different way, and makes people think about what lives were like during these 250 years. I mean, lots of changes have happened, but and people have lived their lives very differently, but just giving it that sort of human edge. Hopefully people will find that fascinating. So she's performing that in 3 different, once in the Unitarian Chapel, which will be quite interesting, and up at number 28 in the Marketplace, and then at the Strutt Centre.
Okay.
And really quite excited about that one. I just think it's great to use the history, the photographs, the stories we've got in a different ways. If people have different ways of engaging with history and information, and we're trying to give them an opportunity to do that rather than just sit down and be talked to. There are chances to be sat down and talked to, because I do a lot of the talking, but that some people don't want to do that, and that's great. I mean, she's come up with her own songs. It's just fantastic what she's done. It's a lovely way of engaging in a different way.
Yes. Yeah.
That's all happening in May, those performances.
Okay.
So again, details are on the website.
On the website, yes. So what's the website?
Belper250.co.uk.
Perfect. We should get that in there, shouldn't we? Definitely. And so his birthday celebrations, July, and anything else that you can think of that's quite a significant thing. What about for children, or particularly?
The hobby horses will be, because hopefully they'll be having workshops so that as many children at primary school will have opportunities to make their own hobby horse and then use them in the school sports days, and then whoever does well in the sports days can come down and enter that and in August. And the week after that, we've got Belper's got a horticultural show, which the Strutts always encouraged. That, so they encourage their workers to grow their own vegetables, have animals and the rest, so that they were feeding them better. And they came up with some of the world's earliest allotments, as we understand allotments now. Okay. So we've got Belper Gardening Club are doing their a horticultural show and talking about the Strutt farms and various things as well, and that's in August.
Are you entering anything?
Well, I got to judge they did a trial run last year on a much smaller scale, and I got to judge that. I like that. I got through a lot of jams and chutneys, and the best piccalilli I've ever eaten in my life. They gave me the jar, what was left of it. But yeah, it was great fun, and I think people will enjoy having a look at all the entries and.
Is it like the biggest tomato marrow? Do they do based on size? What's the criteria of this?
It's more about the quality of them than the scale of them. Back in the Strutt days, I mean, 1807, there were gooseberry shows were the big thing. With like 40 different types of gooseberry back in 1807, and people putting them in to see whose gooseberries would win.
That's quite a niche market.
Yeah, I don't think we could really get away with a gooseberry show now. There's only a limited interest in gooseberries, but it has been going on for a long time. Most of that 250 years, there's been horticultural shows. Haven't really been any in recent years, so it's nice to revive. It's another great thing to revive from the town's history.
Do we bring back the gooseberry show?
We should have a few gooseberries, shouldn't we? Perhaps I should tell them now. Get the gooseberries growing.
It's a heritage fruit.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure we get 40 varieties in Belper now, but they must have done those days. I didn't even know there were 40 varieties till I read it in the newspaper report from 1807.
This is what we get in your old newspaper report. I love it. So, I'd like to say thank you for reading all those newspapers, because you're clearly carrying something through for Belper, which, many people who've lived here aren't going to know all of this stuff. So really good to share it. And thank you.
I'm glad I did. I mean, I don't know everything about Belper, far from it, but I like the kind of stuff, the weird and wonderful things that have happened that are stuck in my head come out occasionally and seem to entertain people.
So what's your best weird and wonderful off the top of your head that you can share with us?
Oh, crikey me. Possibly there was the Elephants versus Clowns football match by the Lion Hotel in 1899. After this was part of a circus that was visiting,
right.
But at the end of the match, they offered to Belper Town Football Club whether they would come forward and have a penalty shootout against the Elephants, and the Elephants won.
Oh,
for our Belper Town. Yeah.
We might have to cut that bit.
Don't mess with the elephant.
They came back the following year and the Elephants won again and didn't get invited back after that. But so probably the Elephants football match.
Sorry to any Nailers fans.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
They've done much better since. It's just elephants. How do you get a ball past an elephant sat in a
That's fair enough. Yeah, they had an unfair advantage there.
I think goalkeepers are a much better size these days than they were then. Yeah, so probably that one.
Yeah.
There are many more.
There was the inglorious end to the Donkey Derby that year, wasn't there? With the
oh yeah, there was because the Donkey Derbies they stopped around the end of the 19th century as well, and that was somebody basically couldn't get their donkey going, so they when they finally did, they decided to take a shortcut. It was you started on Green Lane, went up to the marketplace, down to where the geese roundabout is now. It wasn't there then. Along the A6 and up Long Row back to Green Lane, and he took a shortcut, got in front, and then carried on as if he'd done the whole course. Mm-hmm. When he arrived, they presented him with the first prize, which was a barrel of beer. But the person that had actually stayed in front and knew that nobody had overtaken him then arrived and saw that they'd already presented this barrel of ale to this other one. So he got off his donkey, thumped the man with his ale, whose family then turned on the man who thumped him, and they thumped him, and his family then thumped that family. And then we had a mini riot on Green Lane, and they decided it was best just to ban the donkey races. The well dressings got banned for a while as well.
They can't ban a well dressing. It's the most tame.
No.
They're flowers.
It became a very male-orientated thing in Belper towards the end of the 19th century because there were big prizes for the best well dressings. And so the men would put together absolutely massive well dressings, and then they'd leave one on their team to look after the well dressing the night before the judging, and the rest of them would go out and try and wreck each other's well dressings. So again, there were massive fights in town to try and wreck the well dressing. So they banned that. The only wells that were being produced after that for 60 years were the nuns at St Lawrence Convent were allowed to carry on because apparently they had no intention of wrecking anybody else's. So they were a safe bet for well dressings. Yeah.
Oh, men, competitive.
Yeah, it is. It's that sort of competitive spirit gone to the nth degree. Yeah.
You'd have thought it. It just seems like the most peaceful thing on earth is a well dressing, but it is now. Spoilt my life.
Yeah, it wasn't then.
It has a dark side.
Yeah. The photographs of the well dressings, it's just the size of them is crazy. They must have spent so much time and effort making these massive, beautiful structures, and they've just gone around trying to wreck each other. And
where are the wells?
There were wells all over because we're in a valley, so they come in on the springs come in on all sides. That, but they've all disappeared underground now. There's on where Swinney Lane becomes Cemetery Road. There's the old Swinney Well. Okay. It's built into the stone wall. There's a house behind it, but you can actually take the stone out to reach the well.
Okay. Now we know.
Knowledge there. We're going to have a look later.
Yeah.
So that's been really fascinating, interesting for us, hopefully interesting to some of the viewers as well. And, we fully support all of these activities, obviously. And and we're very grateful to both of you coming along, and to our special silent guest of the moment.
He's very contemplative.
He just looks very content, doesn't he?
I feel like he's gazed at you the whole way through, just, you know.
Do you think we've got something? I can't deny I'm feeling a little bit.
his double is in Belper Library, because we've got a copy of the original painting that was based on, with a framework knitting machine with the Derby rib attached. So if you want to see what it was that made his fortune in the first place, you can see the Derby rib in Belper Library.
I'm sure not everyone knows that's there. And how long's that there for?
All this year.
Okay.
So anytime you can go in. The other Strutts will be joining him in June, I think it is. We've got the portraits of his sons and grandchildren will be coming out.
Right. So
and going
who
in the
did
library
this
as well.
portrait in the first place?
Joseph Wright.
It was
Joseph Wright.
Wright.
Yeah, it's Wright of Derby. Yeah.
Obviously, assume that's the case. And he's just had his exhibition in London, and that's coming back to Derby museums as well, isn't it? Yeah. So there's.
Yes, that's going to be. There's a big exhibition starting in September, I think, at Derby Museum and Art Gallery, and that's where Jedediah is currently. Because I don't think he made the London exhibition.
Did he not?
He didn't, but he is there currently, I believe, the original.
Yeah. We're very, it's amazing to sit here and say all of this about such a small area. All very interesting.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been wonderful. And just a quick reminder for our listeners/viewers, your website that we can go to is
Belper250.co.uk.
Perfect. So this is our lounge setup. Today we've got 4 seating and obviously 4 mics. You can check us out at luminaryvision.co.uk, and you can book with us using First 10 with 10% off as well. So stay tuned for lots of upcoming things this year, and we'll catch you later.